Now, just like before, you can see that each place where we made a change, the program has nicely dropped a keyframe for us, and that's saved that setting. Now, we can go back to those locations and make a change, or we can even add more keyframes if we want some different motion. What I'd like to look at now is what happens when we actually click on the ball or on the motion tween up here. Now, I'm going to unlock this layer so that we can work on it, and you can see that path comes back in. We can see the dots that represent each one of the frame movements, and remember in our last chapter we saw that dots spaced close together is going to be a very slow moving object, and dots further apart is something that's going to be a little bit faster and sped up. What we didn't talk about though is that we actually have the ability to make changes here as well. Now, of course, one way to make the changes is to move the playhead to the position you want and then grab the object to move it around, but that's going to make a new keyframe. What's interesting is that you can actually grab these big dots here, which actually represent our big keyframe points, and you can edit them right on the stage and change the entire path of the object. Now that's pretty handy. So all you have to do is make sure that you can see the bigger dots amongst all the small ones. We can see them at each one of the end locations. For instance, I could pull this one in just a little bit to get it over the hole. And you'll notice this way I don't have to go moving the timeline all over the place. As long as I can see the path, I can make changes to it. Now you might remember from our earlier lessons that the cursor that we're seeing here is actually the same one we've seen before. This is what we see when we're changing vector paths and changing the shape of objects on our drawing layers. Well, if you move your cursor down the path a little bit, you'll see the other cursor that we used to see, and that was our push and pull cursor that allowed us to change the curvature of our vector paths. And you might have guessed by now, what we're actually dealing with here is that our motion path is a vector path. And if I just go right into the middle here and push it like a normal vector, I can actually push and pull and change the curvature of the path of our moving object. So if I pull it down here a little bit like this, I can maybe get a little bit more dramatic animation. You can see now the ball kind of comes in on the green, a little bit of curve and wobble, and it looks like it's going to miss the hole, but it finally drops in. We could even make changes to this section of the curve, even though it's really short. I could push it up here just a little bit, and that way we get a little rounding on the drop. Now, let me come over here and I'll just scrub through the playhead, watch the motion of the ball as it comes in. You can see it gets right on the lip and hangs there, and then we kind of have it falling over the edge. And that looks like a very, very natural motion path. The motion path we made here wasn't really special, and that means that all of our motion paths are going to act like this. So whenever you want to make changes, just go in and select the path and push and pull it to your heart's content. If it helps, you might want to even lock those layers around it so that you don't accidentally grab the back pieces while you're trying to move the path around. Now the path color will change to match the color that's been selected randomly for each layer. You can see the color chips here. Each time we make a new layer, it just drops a color chip in. But if you want to change that just so you can see the path a little bit better, you can double click on the icon at the beginning of the layer, and that brings up your layer properties, and then you can just choose another color that's going to work better for you. Like I might go for a darker color here just because when I click OK, I can see all those points much better against my green background. Now, while we still have the path up, I'd like to mention one more thing. If you're more comfortable with the pen set of tools, you can use those to edit your motion paths as well. And what I'm talking about is the pen and, of course, the subselection tool. If we switch over to that subselect tool, you'll notice that all the control points in my path show up as big squares, and when I click on them, I get the points and handles associated. And as you can see, we can use these controls to reshape our curves just as easily as using the normal selection tool.